Hello, welcome to my channel, another Bibliophile Reads. My name is Greg, and this is the beginning of week 13 of the 100 book challenge. A challenge where I am not going to buy another book until I read 100 books that I already own. As of this morning, I was at book 65. I'm standing here at the banks of the Rappahannock River in Virginia. It's a rather cold morning. It's about 34 degrees. But I'm going for my walk and listening to my audiobook. So it's going to be a good morning. And I'm looking forward to the week and see what I will read. I have finished reading my 66th book. That was Brides of the Impaler by Edward Lee, a horror novel originally published in 2008. I read this as part of the prompts in the Kindle Kobo cleanup event. It was the oldest book on my Kindle that I have not read. And I purchased this book in October of 2008. That's an awfully long time to have a book sitting on a Kindle unread. Anyway, this is a horror novel. It starts off in 1977 in Romania. A college professor is working in the ruins of Vlad Tepes' castle. And Vlad Tepes, of course, was the inspiration for Bram Stoker's character Dracula. And there is an earthquake at the end of that chapter. It then skips ahead to modern day New York. There is a woman. She is an artist. She designs creepy doll characters that are wildly popular. And she's getting quite wealthy creating these creepy doll characters. These are like 4-inch miniature dolls of monsters and victims of violent crime or victims of heinous diseases. But they're popular dolls. And she's getting married to a very successful lawyer. And this lawyer has purchased a home across the street from a Catholic church. It originally belonged to the Catholic Church, and they were unloading some of their property. So he has bought it, and he has renovated it. And they have just moved in, this woman and her husband. And she's having these bizarre sexual dreams. And this novel quickly devolves into some really rather erotica scenes of the woman unable to be satiated by her fiancé, has to, let's just say, delve to self-service in front of an open window where she is observed by a homeless woman. And this homeless woman is part of a pack of 4 that live in an abandoned Banana Republic building just a few blocks away. Not even a few blocks, just a few buildings away from where this woman is living. And of course, these homeless women are not what they seem. Now, as a horror novel, it's okay. Edward Lee got his claim to fame writing The Big Head, which was sort of extreme gore and extreme sexuality in a horror novel before extreme horror was sort of a genre of its own. And as a novel, I think this book has a lot of flaws. Edward Lee, by the time he wrote this book, had written quite a few novels. He was an experienced writer. And my assumption is that he had a contract with Leisure Publishing to deliver a novel every year. And being a writer under contract, he delivers a novel every year. And it sort of reads that way. It reads like a novel that was written under contract to get a paycheck. Not really a bad novel, but not a really memorable one either. Readers going in know it has something to do with Dracula because it states so right in the first chapter. And how it all wraps up in the end, well, I'm not going to tell you, other than the title is Brides of the Impaler. And let's just say some people get impaled in modern New York City. I kind of liked the end. Had a neat little semi-twist at the end. Not a super powerful twist, but enough to keep me saying, all right, that was a fairly decent. And if you noticed, I have not held up my Kindle after reading it because my Kindle edition is so old, purchased in October 2008, it doesn't even have a cover on the Kindle book. It's that old. And the formatting from 2008 is just wildly off. Amazon was experimenting with different formats back then, and the format they used for Brides and the Impaler was, let's just say, really rather substandard. And it is no longer available for purchase on Kindle. You can only buy Brides and the Impaler now on paperback format, and not the original Leisure either. I have finished my 67th book, The Odd Couple, a play by Neil Simon. It was originally produced in New York City in 1965. I am more familiar with the television series that starred Tony Randall and Jack Klugman, but this is just the original play. I picked this up at a thrift store for 50 cents on a whim, and it's really the 100 book challenge that just got me out to read this because why not read a play in a day? So how did I like this play? It's an interesting character study. Neil Simon did a very good job at putting up Felix against Oscar, two men who were just good friends but totally unalike. And I really think it's Felix that carries the play. He is the character that everyone is looking towards because he's such a git, is I guess the word for it. You can totally see why his wife divorced him, and you can sort of see why Oscar Madison took him in. In this play, it starts off, and this is just the beginning. Act 1. It is a warm summer night in Oscar Madison's apartment. This is one of those large 8-room affairs on Riverside Drive in the upper 80s. The building is about 35 years old and still has vestiges of its glorious past, with high ceilings, walk-in closets, and thick walls. Holy moly! Imagine how much money that would cost today in Manhattan. I can't even fathom how much. But see, Oscar is divorced, and he's living alone in this 8-room apartment, and he's running behind on child support payments. So when Felix's wife kicks him out, and Felix shows up at a poker game with no place to live, Oscar says, "You can move in with me." Hilarity ensues because Felix just has to live Felix's way, which would drive me absolutely bonkers. I mean, I'm a little bit of a neat freak and a little bit of the laid-back Oscar too in me. So I'm sort of in between the two. So is this a great play? I think for its time, it was quite great. I liked it. I would definitely give it, let's just say, positive minus sort of review, saying, yeah, you can really like this, but it's never going to be one of the greatest plays that I've ever read. I'd love to see it actually put on stage. I have finished my 68th and 69th book. They are kind of linked together. You will see the link shortly. But the 68th book was the book of Job out of the Bible. Now, this is the Skeptics Annotated Bible, which is a very good edition to read from if you are a skeptic or a non-believer. If you look at the text, you will have the original biblical text on one side of the page, and then you have annotations about what really isn't right with the text from a skeptic's point of view. And there are a number of different icons. They will point out absurdities. They will point out injustice, cruelty, intolerance, contradictions. They will chirp out misogyny, sex, and so forth. So if you look carefully in there, you will see that they have little icons about what is wrong with the text. Not every page has a lot of the annotated comments there from the scholars, but it can help you read along, and some of them are just funny. So it's sort of like the ones that bring out contradictions in science. Like the pillars of heaven tremble and are astonished at his reproof. You're going like, what pillars of heaven? That's just a metaphor. But that's what we get. So in the book of Job, Job is listed as the most perfect man. And of course, there are no perfect men, no perfect women, no perfect people. That's what he's listed as. And so God and Satan start a bet saying Satan can cause Job's faith to fail. And God says, bring it on. Let's have this bet. So it's uncertain who brings the misery onto Job. Does Satan bring on the misery to Job, or does God just allow Satan to bring it on, or does God actually do the misery bringing? So Job's sons die. Job's wife dies. His daughters die. His wealth and land get redistributed to other people. So he's flat out broke, and all his loved ones are gone. But Job perseveres in his faith towards God. Now, the opening book or chapter or two in the book of Job are all about this bet between God and Satan. Now, let me just bring in my own interpretation. Is that if there were a God, and that God allowed a man to suffer for the sake of a bet with his enemy, I would say that God is absolutely positively under no circumstances at any point in time worth worshiping. But the bulk of the book of Job is about why Job should maintain his faith. There was 4 friends, 4 colleagues, where they're all inquiring of Job, why are you remaining faithful? And Job, of course, answers in quite lengthy reasons. And again, I totally disagree with this, that Job was a bit of a daft fool for following this God. So obviously, I'm not really made out to be a believer in this faith. So what made me pick up the book of Job? Well, I was looking through some novels from the New York Review Books of Classics, and I came up with a book of Blam by Aleksander Tisma. This is a novel written in 1972 in Serbo-Croatian. It is essentially about World War II and the death of many Hungarian Jews. And on the back, it is listed as a modern-day retelling of the book of Job. So when I read that before starting this, I decided, that's a good enough reason to pick up the book of Job to compare this as the modern book of Job. So anyway, you have a character named Blam. He was a Jew before World War II began, living in I can't quite remember the name of the city. I can't. It's in the former Yugoslavia, and some of those names are a little difficult to pronounce. But it starts off with him. I'm sorry. It starts off with him after World War II, a couple decades, I believe, and he's wandering around this fabulous building that's been reconstructed out of the ruins of World War II, and it talks about Then it goes back in time and talks about a lot of the Jews that got killed in this purge. So that is the essence of the story. Blam is sort of an alienated man. He survived by marrying a Christian woman and converting to Christianity. So obviously, this is a story of how he justifies his existence as a survivor when all of his family got killed in this purge. Now, would I have picked out the book of Job as being an inspiration to this novel if I had not read it on the back or read the book of Job itself? No. I think that is an interpretation from some literary critic. I think there are some ways you can hold true with that, but it's not a connection that I directly made after reading both books, basically back to back. I can recommend this. This is a positive book. Not a positive book. It's a positive reading experience, but it is a very dense book. This book is 226 pages. The type is a little smaller than I prefer, but it's really the density of the writing that makes this a very slow and deliberate read. You have to be willing to take your time with this book. I read this in a few days. I probably should have taken an extra day or two to read this, to fully gleam out every nugget that is in this book, because there's a lot that I think I missed on my casual reading of this book. Anyway, I do recommend it for the right kind of reader. And I'm going to call that a wrap for week 13. I didn't read as much as I would have liked to. I had a couple of personal events going on this week that just sort of sidetracked me from reading. Well, anyway, onward to week 14. Thank you for watching, and keep on reading.